Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco here with you today, and we are going to be reviewing another issue of The Amazing Spider-Man together. Today we are looking at issue number 41 of The Amazing Spider-Man, which does feature the introduction of a brand new villain. So we've got a lot to look forward to, and the hint or the foreshadowing of a very big milestone in issue number 42 next episode. But today we are looking at episode number 41. So very much looking forward to that. I do, of course, as always, want to thank you for checking out the video, for subscribing here to the channel, and making sure that you have the notifications button on, because these videos do come out every Monday at 8 a.m. And to make sure that you don't miss a single episode, make sure you have those notifications turned on. As well, there are a lot of other videos here on the channel, so feel free to check those out. If you are new, make sure you're checking out the playlist here of our Amazing Spider-Man retrospective videos. We go all the way back to the Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man. So, without further ado, let's head over to the comic and take a look. Okay, and here we have the Amazing Spider-Man 41 featuring the first appearance of the Rhino. So, super fun. The Rhino, probably not as one of Spider-Man's more well-known villains, though if you are a Spidey fan, you certainly know who the Rhino is. It's sort of one of the most powerful in terms of strength, power villains that Spidey does have in his rogues gallery. Another animal-based villain, which I think is very interesting, right? We see that more with Spider-Man than, say, for example, we'll go with Batman. Batman has characters like the Joker and Mr. Freeze and the Riddler and the Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul, but you don't hear a lot of animal-based, even though Batman is bad. But for whatever reason, the Amazing Spider-Man has lots of animal-based sort of villains. We have, of course, Dr. Octopus, the Vulture, the Rhino, the Scorpion, the Lizard. So yeah, just another one of those. Really cool design. We'll get into that into the issue here as well, where we see some very nice depictions of this Rhino costume and how it works, and get into it. I do want to point out this is one of the here, we're going to cut back. One of the actual issues that I, again, have here in the reprint. So this is Marvel Tales featuring Spider-Man. This is number 180. So this is a reprinted copy of this. And I did go ahead and look through this as I was doing my notes for this episode. To be honest, I really didn't find any significant differences that would have changed anything. In the past, we've seen some stuff where coloring has really affected, so the reprint really is just recolored, but things that were supposed to be at night were sort of shown during the day, or things of that nature. Here, there wasn't anything overly significant that I noticed, so we're not necessarily going to go through this reprint as we go through the episode, but again, just thought it would be interesting to share. This is one of the ones that I had. I bought off the rack. This came out in October of 1985. So again, I read that issue a ton in 1985, and so I'm very well familiar with this issue. So let's jump in. Great cover. You know, it shows the Rhino exactly as you want, which is a super powerful, almost unstoppable villain. Very much in league kind of with the Juggernaut, right? A character that once they get moving in one direction, you cannot stop them due to their strength and their massiveness, which is really exemplified here. Not only is the Rhino dominating the cover, he's breaking through a wall. That is always a great way to sell a cover, is have the character, a character kind of breaking through. That is great. And then on top of it, he's dominating the space. He's even overlapping the title. So the Rhino is supposed to be big, massive, bulk, and the cover really depicts it very well here. So again, very cool, neat design. Then we go in and we see the splash page, Of course, this is my opportunity to let you know this is a scanned PDF copy of the original from 1966. So in this issue, we'll be seeing it as it was printed at that time. And so, again, this is a scanned PDF copy of that original. So as interesting, very interesting, as we look at these credits, we've talked about this in the last couple issues as we've transitioned to artist John Romita. John Romita is doing the pencils for this issue. And then it has M. DeMeo, or Mike DeMeo, listed as the inker. We've identified in the past episode, if you saw that one, that M. DeMeo is a pseudonym for Mike Esposito. And then actually, if you look, we'll pull it up, but here in the reprint, the credits actually list Mike Esposito. So by 1985, it was no longer a secret that Mike Esposito, who had been primarily a DC inker for quite some time, was also doing work here at Marvel. So no big deal at that point. But here in 1966, they were trying to sort of probably keep it on the down low a little bit. The other thing that I want to talk about is some information that was provided to me by a friend, both of me, the channel, and super comic historian Nick Caputo, that there were some pencil assists in this book. So due to deadlines of trying to not only get this issue done, but also the next annual, the Spider-Man annual, John Romita was under a deadline crunch. And so there was another artist that was brought in that did some work. Now, we don't know exactly what John did and what the other artist did. I'll get to that in a second. But we're going to speculate, and I think you'll be able to tell as well as I will when we get there. So the other artist, his name is Bill Ward, and there is a great article that Nick sent me from his blog that talks about all this, goes through Bill Ward's history, and kind of gives Nick's perspective on what pages and panels were worked on by whom. I'm going to take and I'm going to link that in the description. If you are a comic historian fan and want to deep dive into some behind the scenes stuff, I do highly recommend not only this article, but check out Nick's blog as well. So we're here to splash page. I've talked about this a million times. I don't like the splash page. It doesn't dive into the story. I feel like it's wasted real estate. We've already got a cover of Spidey versus the Rhino. Why do we need another cover essentially inside of Spidey versus the Rhino? So, okay. The drawing itself is very good. The two figures are nice. The webbing in the background is cool. But again, doesn't do anything for me as far as moving the story along. But well executed nonetheless. So here we go. As far as starting off, it's really story-wise. There's nothing super crazy here artistically to talk about. But we do have Peter is engaging in buying a motorcycle. And so this is one of the earlier or first real scenes that we've seen. Besides, we've seen Peter go to college, but that's still school and he's still a student. He's still living at home and stuff. But now we're starting to see even more maturing. It's also very interesting that it comes out of the blue. Like all of a sudden, Peter is a guy who's like, I need a motorcycle. I need to get around town. I need to be able to travel and maneuver. And you're like, kind of comes out of the blue. It's kind of un-Peter-like, especially because you consider, as far as I know, Peter Parker, throughout the history of Spider-Man, as Peter Parker, has never owned a car. There's the spider buggy. We'll get into that. But if I'm not mistaken, I think even during that time, he mentions the fact he doesn't even have a driver's license. So I don't know that Peter Parker ever owns or operates a vehicle. So why all of a sudden he needs a motorcycle? The other thing that I wanted to point out here is the sudden switch back to the blue suit, yellow vest outfit. So we had seen Peter kind of outgrow that to the point where physically he was saying his clothes didn't fit. He had to buy new clothes, and he had gone to a more casual, again, maybe a little more mature type of outfit. Certainly a more hip or cooler type of outfit. I mean, how many college kids get up every day and put on a tie just to go out to look at buying a motorcycle? So, um, yeah. So all of a sudden, this has gone back. So it makes me wonder a little bit about, was that from an older reference? Um, was it just John liked the suit better than the vest combo that he had been sort of wearing? Who knows? But I just thought that was an interesting note that we've kind of stepped backwards a little bit. And then the story refers back to J. Jonah Jameson and his son, and even gives us a flashback to Amazing Spider-Man #1. Again, you can go back to my playlist and see me talk about this issue where Spider-Man saves Jonah's astronaut son from crashing into Earth via a space mission. And so that Jonah and his son are talking about that. And of course, Jonah is ranting and raving about how much he hates Spider-Man, how he's not a real hero, that somebody like his son should really be the real hero. And then he's throwing darts at this picture. So I like this, where this is how Spidey is in Jonah's mind, this kind of lurching, large figure that's, menacing in its own way, as opposed to maybe a little more heroic. And then this image that we have here, let me blow this up a little bit. It's a very, I found it interesting. So this is a very classic Spider-Man merchandise image. Spidey running with his right hand up and his left hand down. I actually, as a kid, had a cutout that I think had to be about, I don't know, maybe 2 feet high. That was some sort of like cardboard. It was black and white, and you could paint it. And I had that hanging on my closet door for the longest time as a kid. And so this picture, whenever I see this, takes me right back to my childhood and makes me think about that piece of Spider-Man merchandise. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Again, nothing super great as far as artistically. Again, very subtle. I do like this. We talked about it in the last episode where memories, people, flashbacks have a slight, very subtle change to the panel border. So that it's kind of reminiscing. Same all the way to here and then back to reality. And then we have sort of the same thing. So Jonah's son is explaining that on his last space mission, there were some sort of spores that were back in the capsule and seemed to be stuck to him, but nothing has happened, at least for now. This is where we'll see down the road. If you see my episode about the looter. So if you remember, the looter is a guy who captures gets his hands on a meteorite, cracks it open, and there are space spores inside the meteorite that give him super strength. That reminded me of this story and how foreshadowing what we'll see kind of happening to Colonel Jameson in the future. And now here we have down in the bottom a big panel showing the Rhino. Now, normally I would say this is a great panel. I like the wide angle. I like the coloring is very nice. The foreground piece of the ground with the cactus and the rock, and he's running by stomping, is terrific. I'll point this out as well throughout the episode. Most of the time when we see the Rhino and he's showing power, he's usually moving from left to right on the page. Again, we've talked about this before, but as Western readers, our language is written left to right. So visual language is also left to right. So as we move forward in time, you want to show energy, you want to show motion, you usually draw things going from the left-hand side of the page to the right-hand side of the page. It's just a psychological thing that we all understand. It's a feel more than anything else, but you feel like that character is moving forward in intention, in space, and time, as opposed to when somebody's going the other way, it feels differently. Normally, I would say, boy, we've got this here. Why don't we expand, make these panels a little bigger, and let's have this be the page turn. So on the page turn, we would see the first appearance of the Rhino. But that's okay because here we have a really good shot of the Rhino. Not as big as maybe I would have liked, or certainly what you would see in today's comics, but a nice full body shot of the Rhino coming right at us. So that's really good. This maybe what I would have done here is even shadow, like they did here, where the Rhino figure is mostly in shadow, and these guys are like, what? The guards at the border are trying to stop him. Maybe this figure could have been even more shadowed as well. And then boom, here's your reveal of what the Rhino looks like. And you see the man's face inside the costume. And as I mentioned, the design is interesting because here, when he puts his head down, it's very Rhino looking. It actually has an eye, a fake eye on the side of supposed to be a rhinoceros eye. The horns, the big lump on the head. So very, very rhinoceros-like. Again, neat design. Compared to things like, you think about like the vulture. Yes, he has a costume, but he doesn't wear a beak mask, or the scorpion doesn't have like claw hands. He has a tail, and he's green. He doesn't exactly look like a scorpion. Of course, Dr. Octopus doesn't look like an octopus, but he has 4 mechanical limbs and his own 4 limbs. But this guy is very literal. He is supposed to be a human rhinoceros. So there we go. And now we have Betty Brant. We've seen that coming up. She has returned to the city and happens to bump into Peter. And the two of them sit down to a cup of coffee to talk. And very quickly, the two of them realize whatever chemistry that they had is gone. Peter, has moved on in his heart, whether he knew it or not. Betty seemingly has as well. And so this is really the last straw, I believe, of the Betty, Brant, Peter romance. It's time to move on. I am going to come back to this later in the issue because I want to compare how Betty is drawn to how another female character is drawn and really see the difference between the two. But just to kind of keep it in mind, take a look here. Betty is drawn as a very sweet, kind of wide-eyed girl with a cute little bob haircut, rounder face. Nothing wrong with it, but just again to compare later. And then in this page, I really noted, and you'll see this if you go to Nick's blog post about this issue, you'll see some history about John Romita, and it's very clear about his start in romance comics. Like if you took the dialogue out of here and there was nothing to do with the Rhino in the final panel, this is straight out of an old romance comic book. So that's obviously where his experience is. So these what we call talking head panels, where people are just, there's no action going on. They're just sort of standing, talking, or sitting, talking, whatever. He's very good at them. But you can clearly see where his experience comes from. So then we cut to the Rhino being shown on a TV in a store, and we have a nice wide shot here of not only this. So Peter's looking at it. These kids are arguing about, who's going to win, Rhino or Spider-Man. And then as he turns his head, because he hears Jonah and Jonah's son. So Peter needs to talk to him about the money he needs for his motorcycle. And he gets kind of the cold shoulder. So anyway, I like the transition here with the large panel so that we can see where Peter is. Gives us a little more of a space and the people around, and then explains why he all of a sudden would see Jonah and his son, because he's turned his head and seen them. Heads home, and I noted this. He hangs up his Spider-Man costume in his closet in plain view. Like, what if Aunt May is like, oh, I'm going to be kind. I helped Peter with his laundry. I'll put his laundry away, or something. I mean, crazy. But I think I understand for the story, he's struggling between, does he want to go and patrol as Spider-Man, or does he want to work on this term paper? And he's just, he's just troubled. He can't decide. So it's the imagery here is to depict, there's two people, right? There's Peter and there's Spider-Man. and they have different needs and different desires and different responsibilities. So it's just a way to separate visually his two identities. So I get it. You'd have to be able to show the costume somewhere, but he could have been, he could have been hanging up his jacket and seen it, folded up maybe where he hides the costume, something to that effect. Again, now we change scenes. And one of the things I've noted this in earlier issues, for me as a comic book creator and a storyteller, again, this is an opportunity where I would want to change the scene on the page turn. I know that this page right here, this is page 10, is on the right hand side of the book, and we're going to flip the page. And so for me, I like to use that turn as a way of sort of wiping the slate clean, and we're starting with a new scene. Instead, we have these last two panels are a new scene. And so you have to include this dialogue that explains this is not where Peter is. We're changing scenes and we're going to the railway yard, and then the Rhino's going to break out. So I don't know. It's just one of those things where it feels like it's just sort of done. And to me, it's a simple matter of planning out your pages, maybe a little on those page turns. I value them a lot. Maybe it wasn't as big a deal at the time, but to me, it just seems much more clear for a reader, especially at this time. You're really focusing on younger readers. Comics are still something sold to kids. They're cheap, they're disposable. And it's, maybe their reading level isn't quite as high as what it would be for, your average comic buyer today or a little bit older. So instead of relying on the reading to explain what's happening, I'd rather show what's happening. And that's where I would do it on a page turn. So nice scene of the Rhino here. Again, he's moving from left to right as he's heading out of the scene, and the cops are shooting at him and nothing seems to stop them. Bullets bounce off. So very nice there. Peter hears this on the radio and decides to go into action. Now, this is a terrific panel here of Spidey crawling down the wall of the house. Great shadow over the siding of the house. So you see where it sort of goes up on each of the little levels of the siding, because it's, each tilted. It's tilted over the top of each other. Very nice shadow work there. Great pose of him running down the wall. Then you have this swinging pose, and same thing over here. You have a pretty good pose of him hanging upside down on the window. I think we've seen this same thing be a little more dynamic with sort of, maybe one of his arms is behind a leg, or, twisted a little more insect-like. And then this swinging pose, which again, these just look like a regular guy swinging on a rope, like maybe over a pond, and then he's going to jump in or something. Not the best swinging poses. So it tells me that maybe John Romita has not really gotten a handle on the swinging aspect of how Spider-Man would look or move as he's swinging through the air. It'll be interesting to see as we move forward how long it takes him to kind of get a handle on that. But I mean, this is not, in my mind, how Spider-Man swings. He's more agile. He's more flexible. He's more, his whole set of powers and abilities lends itself to swinging. Think about in your head all of the Spider-Man movies we've had, and how dynamically Spider-Man moves through the air as he's swinging. This is not dynamic at all. These are very stiff and very dull poses. Again, one more time, the Rhino breaking in through the wall. He's after Jonah's son, Colonel Jameson, because the foreign powers that have hired the Rhino, they want to find out about those spores. So you're assuming it would be like Russians, in the 60s. So again, moving left to right again to show that power. He's running away, also kind of moving to the right of the panel, which takes us to the end of the page. So a nice visual to get to the page turn, which is really good. And then here is potentially one of the first pages that we see that probably has another hand in it. And one of the things I said here in my notes is we'll see this. We're getting into the fight part of it. The rest of the issue almost completely is the fight between Spidey and the Rhino. And the Rhino's size varies almost panel to panel. So in here, he's holding Colonel Jameson. He's clearly large. He's holding this man with one hand. You can see how large his hand is. It covers half of the thigh, the back of the thigh of Colonel Jameson. I mean, this guy's got to be at least, he's a 6'8" kind of, and wide and big kind of guy. And then you get here and you look in like this on this fourth panel, Spidey jumps up and he's as big as the Rhino is. Same thing here. I mean, it's just all of a sudden he becomes very small at times, which feels very strange. So there's some awkwardness to some of these images. I think this panel really shows it, the way Spidey's leaping out of the way. And there's a real weird, so I never know all this time. I've had a copy of this comic since 1985 and I never noticed this. Here's Spidey's left arm. Here's his left leg. Here's his right leg. Here's his right arm behind. What is that? Is that supposed to be a foot? A hand? Like, what is that? So now I got to look. Oops. Now I got to look through and see if that's also in the reprint, or was that fixed? So let's get to here. It was fixed. They fixed it. Here, let me cut back to me and you'll see. So here's the panel right there. And as you can see, right above the word stomp, they fixed it. Very interesting. So somebody else noticed it a lot faster than I did, because it took me all these years to finally see that. And then I also noted this. I mentioned this in the previous issue. I thought that John Romita did not show Spider-Man, again, fighting or moving in a very spider-like or agile or acrobatic kind of way, that he was just kind of lining up and punching the Green Goblin, very superhero. This punch, I mean, that the guy is a rhinoceros. It's clear he just smashed through a brick wall with his head. This is no pushover. And Spidey decides he's just going to line up, plant his feet, and just punch this guy in the face. It's fine. I get it, but it's just boring. And you can see it doesn't work, and he hurts his hand. Now we have some Spidey moving around in a more Spider-Man-like way. So jumping out of the way with his arms spread out, clinging to the wall, diving out of the way, coming in with a big kick, much more Spider-Man-like movement. I also wanted to take this opportunity here to note how much we see the motion lines. So throughout this issue, there's tons of it. Here, the Rhino rushing towards him. The punch has motion lines. Spidey leaping out of the way has motion lines. I don't know that we saw that. I'd have to go back to really specifically look for it, but I don't recall seeing this motion line element or effect, if you will, as frequently in the Steve Ditko issues. I think he kind of relied on the position of the bodies to show more, and we understand. Like this next panel, I really like this one. I think this is really, really good. Of the Rhino charging, missing, and then smashing through this phone booth. But there's all these lines. You don't need the motion lines. We know he's moving. It's obvious he's coming through. The glass flying shows us. Spidey leaping out of the way is fine. It's just a lot of extra that I don't know is needed. So I don't know if that's just a cartooning thing. I don't know if that's we'll have to see as we move forward. Is that a John Romita trait that he brings to the rest of the series? Time will tell, but not necessarily the greatest. I don't know. It's okay. People will argue. There's some people that love motion lines, especially you think about like manga or as we or manga as we look at that, the use of motion lines, blur lines, very very popular. Um, Whereas there are other people that say we don't need sound effects. Why are we doing any sound effects? And obviously, there's tons of them here. We know that Stan Lee, I think, was a big fan of sound effects and included them. Sometimes they're helpful. Sometimes they just get in the way of the art. Um, so you can make an argument either way for all of it, and in this case, including the motion lines. And then here we definitely see another hand involved in this comic. Uh, the Rhino, the rendering on the Rhino seems very different. Much more sort of blobby than what it was before. And this Spider-Man head is wrong. It is just flat wrong. The webbing on this is terrible. And we know this is not how John Romita draws the Spider-Man face. If anything, John Romita is the person who kind of simplified and modernized the Spider-Man face. So I'm going to insert an image here that I found that really helps depict the John Romita Spider-Man. And you can see the design of the Spider-Man face and how the webbing works, the size of the eyes. All this becomes much more standardized and is much easier to replicate. Very, very quickly, cut back to the comic. And on the box art, you can see this is still Steve Ditko's Spider-Man. So by comparison, you see there's a lot more lines. There's a lot more web lines than what we had on that John Romita version. So it's simplified. It's pared down into a pattern that's more easy to repeat. And obviously, whoever did this does not understand or know the pattern. Again, kind of basic. Here's another example. Spidey sidesteps and knocks the Rhino into the wall again. And this Rhino looks like he is a full 4 inches shorter than Spider-Man if they were to stand up straight next to each other. So all of a sudden he's become extremely small as opposed to the big brute that he's supposed to. Same thing here. Spidey goes forward and tackles him. And again, you can kind of see the webbing face is not right in just about all of this. The pattern isn't right. It doesn't have a line down the center to the mouth. So again, makes you wonder like who's actually drawing this page. Now, John Romita may have laid it out, done all the like just bubble figures to say here's figure A, B, and then somebody came in and finished it. That's probably what was happening. But whoever did this and finished this does not understand the Spider-Man web pattern. The Rhino here looks small. He looks like he's, a fraction of the size of Spider-Man as Spidey tackles him, which obviously is not the case. Same thing here. Spidey is much bigger. I mean, from his elbow to, I guess, his wrist on his other arm is as long as the Rhino's head to his butt. I mean, it's meaning that Spider-Man could grab him from head to belt with his arms spread out like that and just, and that's as big as the guy is. He should be much, much larger. Though I will say this, I like this. I've talked about it a lot with the Steve Ditko issues. There is what I call choreography continuity. And that means that as one motion happens in panel A, it's clear and obvious that it moves into the motion of panel B. And that's what we see here from this. So he jumps out of the way as the Rhino tries to stop. His right leg is up high. His left leg is down low. And now we see that exact same thing as he locks his legs around his head, the Rhino's head, and then drives him into the ground head first. That's a very creative takedown. It's a very creative choreography. I like it a lot. I think it's really interesting and does follow that choreography continuity that I really enjoy. So it's a good sequence. It's just a shame that, again, whoever did it just doesn't understand the Spider-Man costume pattern. And then you can see like it's very different. I mean, you can see the body size, the anatomy of these two panels of Spider-Man here compared to, say, like, one of these. It just feels different, thinner, a little longer neck. This is a terrific down shot panel of him climbing up the wall, twisting back to wave. I mean, just that's an awesome pose. I would have really enjoyed seeing this is a larger panel, but I think this is terrific. I really like this wide down shot with Spidey crawling up the wall. I think it's terrific. We get to just story wise. So Jonah, of course, wants to blame Spider-Man for everything, and then his son is kind of like, "Hey, calm down. The guy saved me. Maybe you could be a little nicer to him, maybe." And Peter ends up with his motorcycle. The gang sees him with his motorcycle, and Gwen. He talks to Gwen Stacy, and this is what I wanted to show you and compare. Here's Gwen Stacy here. There's another image of her, but just look at the difference. She is meant to be obviously in my opinion, a more mature, a more sultry woman, almost a little femme fatale, if you will. Her eyes have more of an almond shape. Her face a little more narrow, as opposed to more round. The arched eyebrows. Let's compare again to where we saw Betty Brant. So Betty is more of the girl next door. Round cheeks, big eyes, cute, rounder face, just in the structure. Again, but then you have Gwen, and it's obvious why, spoilers, but Peter is going to move on to Gwen Stacy, and there's no question why. So seeing how John drew the two women, drew them differently, and really put an emphasis, I think, on Gwen as a more mature beauty as opposed to a more girlish cuteness, really emphasizes the fact that Peter is moving forward in his life as a man, as a maturing, and what he would be interested in someone. So there we go. Same thing here. You see her looking back again with those arched eyebrows and those very almost more heavy lidded, heavy eyelash eyes. So Gwen Stacy is a real beauty, and like I said, Betty Brant is more of your cute girl next door. Both have their place, but for me, Gwen Stacy wins. That being all said, here we have at the end, we get in this little kicker. Peter is now not going to be able to get away from meeting Mary Jane Watson. So the next issue, we have our first full appearance of Mary Jane Watson. So if you're not familiar, this is an iconic moment in Spider-Man history, and it's going to be a lot of fun to check it out. So there we go. That's the issue, and we will cut over to the desk, sum things up, and wrap it all up. Okay, so that's it. That was the Amazing Spider-Man number 41 and the first appearance of the Rhino. With the exception of a few, I'll call it glitches. Very good issue art-wise. Again, interesting to see. So for all intents and purposes, my understanding from Nick and from others is that, again, John Romita as the new Spider-Man artist wasn't really expecting or planning to be the regular permanent artist moving forward. There's kind of an expectation that Steve Ditko would come back, within a few issues, they'd work out their differences and everything be fine. It didn't happen. So whether or not he was, looking to really make it his own, how much time was he putting into developing or how his Spider-Man style came about. So we're seeing it develop in real time on the page. So it'll be very interesting to see how that goes moving forward. I like the issue. Obviously, it's one that's has a lot of nostalgia for me because I have this reprint from back in the day, and so for me, as an overall rating out of 10, I would give this a good 7.5 out of 10. I think it's a good comic. It's fun. It gives us a setup for a lot of stuff that's going to be happening. We've got this thing about Colonel Jameson, Jonah's son, and the space spores, what's going to happen to him. We're about to meet Mary Jane. We're seeing Peter kind of break out of his shell a little bit. So now there's a little bit of sparks with Gwen, but now Mary Jane is going to be there. How does that all work? The motorcycle, and there's some stuff going on with Aunt May. And so, there's a lot of foreshadowing and things being set up for some big issues and big story arcs down the road. So good issue with a good superhero villain battle. Fun to see Spidey tackle somebody that's clearly supposed to be physically stronger than him, and how does he overcome that? And he uses kind of his agility and his speed to his advantage. Overall, really nice issue. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I had a great time bringing this episode to you. Again, please consider, if you're not already, subscribing to the channel and checking the notifications box. That way, when the next episode is coming out. These do come out every Monday at 8 a.m. But as we've had recently, there are special episodes that we do live streams on, where we have special guests. Again, like I mentioned throughout the episode, my friend Nick Caputo, and we've got some other folks that we're talking about lining up to bring on board as well. So very excited about some big issues and big episodes coming up. So make sure you have those notifications. So not only do you see the pre-recorded episodes, but you'll also know that when the live ones are going live. So thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed your time with me today. I enjoyed it a bunch, and I look forward to speaking to you next time when we bring you more Amazing Spider-Man. Thanks.